Okay, thank you. We'll go here to Jahanzaib.
Thank you so much, sir. This is Jahanzaib Ali from ARY News, Pakistan. So both the presidential candidate telling Americans that this is a very important elections and they will save America. Who's telling the truth? Like President Trump claimed that during his tenure, economy was booming. He created millions of jobs, bring back the industries. But President Biden and Kamala says that actually they are the ones who fixed the economy and created millions of jobs. So who's telling the truth? Thank you.
So thank you very much for the question. I think the great thing about this country is that we have this democratic process where two candidates can go out and argue over exactly this, and we'll have 150 million Americans or more will turn out in the coming months before and on election day in November. And the great thing about it, I really believe that my heart that the great thing about America is that we can see these competing visions, and the voters get to decide what direction they want to pursue. I would note, just as an economic matter, we have seen as a result of, for example, the Biden-Harris administration industrial policy, a level of investment in U.S. manufacturing that is much higher today than it was under the Trump administration. I would also note that China was America's largest trading partner for the duration of the Trump administration. Today, as a result of the Biden-Harris administration policies, we've seen major increases in U.S. trade with countries like Mexico, like Vietnam, with the European Union, with allies and partners. So we are actually seeing the Biden-Harris administration succeed in diversifying away from China, whereas if you just look at the data, the Trump administration did not succeed in diversifying away from China. We've seen middle income wage growth over the last 18 months. There's no denying inflation was painful here in the United States the way it was around the world, but we've seen middle income wage growth over the last 18 months substantially exceed the rate of inflation, and we now have middle income wages adjusted for inflation are higher today than they were in 2020 at the end of the Trump administration. So I think what we are seeing is the Biden-Harris administration, again, if you just look at the data, delivering results economically. I also want to make a point on differences in tariffs. I think we have seen, as I talked earlier, the Biden-Harris administration has increased in a targeted way tariffs on China to ensure that we as the United States do not become unduly dependent on China and various key technologies. President Trump had been out, former President Trump had been out talking about imposing a 10% tariff, not just on China, where there are already tariffs, but on basically everything in the world, including trade partners like Mexico, which we have a free trade agreement, European Union, Pakistan, 10% tariff on the world. And then he began to get questioned about this a couple of weeks ago, and he said, well, maybe it's 10 to 20%. So he actually took it up from 10 to 20%. Now, economic analysis from major investment banks over the last couple of weeks has suggested that kind of global tariff, which again is not targeted against a strategic competitor, but even against allies, would obviously be bad for the allies, but would also increase costs for American consumers by something on the order of $2,500 a year, because it would mean costs for the coffee I drank this morning, which was probably grown in Guatemala or in Kenya. It would mean costs for this shirt, which may well have come from Pakistan. And so I think this is a real debate on sort of, do we want to have a trade policy that, yes, pushes back against our competitor nations, but works with our allies and partners, or are we looking to raise tariffs across the board? I just think if you look at the data, yes, we have this great democracy. Everyone can lay out their competing visions. But I think if you look at the data, what you have seen is that the Biden-Harris administration has delivered for manufacturing, it's delivered for workers, and that the proposals that the Trump administration has laid out, economists suggest would not be great for either our allies or the American people.